are. We're back. You know how it goes. I'm CJ. He's Gilps. We're here recording another video. It's early December now. Yeah, it's been quite a while since we've done this. I know you actually weren't even here the last time after the Blue Jays got eliminated.
Yeah, I was away, but I'm happy to be back. So
Yeah, yep. So some things have happened since then. Obviously, it's a little quieter on our end with baseball season over, so we haven't really done this in a while, but just thought that we'd do one to catch up. We'll continue to do these throughout the off season. We've got the Leafs, we've got the Raptors, we've got the World Juniors coming up, which I'm thinking we'll record a couple videos around that time as well, because that's definitely one of my favorite times of the year. But
and any other sports that come along the way, right?
Yeah. So you know what? So it was just after Thanksgiving when we did this last. Actually, it was Thanksgiving weekend even when I did this with our guest a few weeks ago, and that was right after the Blue Jays had been eliminated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's early December now. Fall's come and gone. It's early winter. We've got a little bit of snow already, but yeah, obviously, Texas Rangers are the World Series champions. What are your thoughts on the playoffs and kind of what happened after the Blue Jays went out?
A little disappointing to see the Jays not go as far as we hoped, but
yeah, of course.
Shout out to Marcus Semien for winning his World Series ring with the Texas Rangers, and yeah, hey, it's a first for everything, you know. So congrats to them, even though I'm not a big Texas fan, but hey, at the end of the day, someone's got to win, right?
Yeah. There was some great games and some great series that happened after that. Obviously, that Rangers and Astros series was great.
Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, I'm not a fan of the playoff format just with all these, even though the Blue Jays did get that third wild card seed, realistically, they could have done better if they knew that they had to get the second seed because they kind of tanked that last game there. But, having a team like the Diamondbacks with 84 wins, although obviously, they were playing their best baseball of the season there at the end, it's 84 wins shouldn't even get you a playoff spot, and here they are in the World Series.
Not quite the World Series. Or did they make?
They made it to the World
Series.
Oh,
okay, that's right. Yeah.
It's been a while.
Mixed up with those sports, so yeah. Yeah. Shout out to them, though. They're almost the underdog. Their head coach, their skipper. You did a great job, you know. And, good for Arizona. They've been out of it for so long, right? So, kind of nice to see
two great managers going at it there in that Astros series as well, which I know Dusty's retired now after that.
Yeah, even Bruce Bochy. Congrats to him. Great coach, right?
Yeah. But yeah, so again, some great series there. And obviously the Rangers, I know that they most of the season looked like a great team, and then they really started struggling, and then swept the Blue Jays in September, only to start struggling again. But bottom line, they end up still getting in. And yeah, they did end up winning that division in the end, right? So they got the AL West title.
Yeah,
because the Astros got the wild card spot, right? And then the Mariners didn't make it. So yeah, they did end up winning their division. They got in. Really, the bullpen, which was their biggest struggle of the whole season. I mean, a couple times in the playoffs it was an issue, but they were able to overcome it with their hitting. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Particularly Adolis Garcia. Obviously, he was the hottest player by far
throughout
the whole playoffs.
Yeah.
So, you got to give him credit for performing in the big moments, but I was really shocked at some of the hot dogging stuff that he was doing. His bat flips, not even walking until the ball goes over the fence. Obviously,
you kind of feel like he's overconfident in a way, right?
The game has changed a lot in the last few years, but I'm just thinking, this is the same franchise that wouldn't get over it when Bautista flipped his bat.
And this guy goes back.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're hypocrites almost.
Yeah.
Again, he wasn't on the team then. Odor is not on the team anymore, so times have changed.
Yeah, where is that guy now?
Yeah. This is the same fan base. It was so unacceptable that Bautista did that they had to punch him the next year. It wasn't because of the dirty slide. It was because he flipped his bat the year before. We all know.
Yeah.
So that's just the fact that this happened, and then it's only a few years later, and now Garcia is the one taking that to a whole new level, and he's playing for the same team. It's and not only the Bautista incident, but remember, in 2020, Fernando Tatis Jr. hits a grand slam against the Rangers. They were up by 7 runs, and then he hit a grand slam on a 3-0 count.
Yeah.
And they started a bench clearing brawl because he didn't have the green light to swing 3-0.
Yeah,
so if you guys are going to care that much about all these unwritten rules and stuff like that, then why is it okay for your player to do it?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So, as great of a playoffs as he had, I think he just took it a little too far there.
A little cocky,
yeah.
Right?
And he did get thrown at, right, in the Astros series after one of his home runs, and it's like, I mean,
deserved it.
Like don't do that if you don't want to get thrown at.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of the lesson. So good to see. There's still some old school stuff left in the game in that sense.
Sure, right?
And then that's when Baker got thrown out because he was arguing that it couldn't have possibly been intentional.
Gotta love Dusty, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great to see.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you look at the Diamondbacks and what carried them so far in the playoffs. Two of their greatest hitters were Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr.
Shout out to those boys.
Yeah.
Former Blue Jays going for it,
So, I mean, it's too early to evaluate any trade. And obviously, Varsho had his moments at the plate last year. Overall, it was a bit of a disappointment offensively.
Yeah.
Again, it's his first year in a new league. He played in a completely different division, in a completely different league for his whole career. So it takes some adjusting. Maybe this year he'll find his hitting again.
That's what it comes down to. You have not such a good season. We'll have a bounce back, for next season.
And as iffy as his hitting was, what? His defense, he was based on that defensive runs saved above average stat. He was literally the best defensive player in all of Major League Baseball. So despite his hitting being streaky and sporadic, obviously defensively there was a huge upgrade getting him, whether he was in left field or center field.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you can't complain there. It's just the fact that we had to give up both of those guys to get him. Yeah. Obviously, it looks bad in the moment, seeing them carry their team to the World Series. Yeah. We just gave up a little bit too much offense, which obviously Teoscar as well, which, I mean, we'll get into that in a bit. He's a free agent. But, obviously, I think it's too early to say that we lost that trade because we don't know what Varsho is truly capable of. Obviously, in the moment, it looks bad. But, on John Gibbons' show, the Gibby Show, at the end of every episode, they do this roast and toast.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking if we do that, might as well do it right now. Our toast, I have to do the roast first. Obviously, it's Adolis Garcia for his behavior there during the ALCS and World Series. He was taking it a little bit too far. And then our toast of the playoffs obviously goes to Moreno and Gurriel.
Yeah.
Who else?
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
And, speaking of John Gibbons, on that note...
Back in the show, eh?
Yeah.
Let's
I couldn't believe it. He's,
good for him.
I wonder if his buddy there, John from the podcast, who's a huge Mets fan, helped him get that role.
Hey, you never know, right?
I mean, of course, Gibby was part of the Mets organization himself back...
Was he a catcher?
As a catcher, yeah. So he was drafted by them, and he had a little bit of big league experience with them, but mostly played in their farm system. So obviously that organization is very familiar with him, and I wonder if the podcast helped him at all.
Probably.
Because people listen to him talk baseball, and they think, oh, I'd like to have this guy in our dugout.
Yeah, for sure. I still think the Jays made a mistake getting rid of him. I love Gibby, man. He was great. He fought for the players, and he was a pretty good coach.
I think it was time for them to move on, and obviously his the game's changing, and he is more of an old school type of manager. But then again, that's why having him as a bench coach would be so good because
you're the young coach as your skipper, and the bench coach.
The manager makes the ultimate decisions, but you have the wisdom of John Gibbons there that give you advice.
Speaking of bench coaches, sort of, kinda, DeMarlo Hill's back with the Blue Jays.
And that was John Gibbons' right-hand man the whole time that he was here, so good to see him back.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting how it's going to work with Mattingly, because Mattingly is still with the organization.
Yeah.
They've just changed the roles slightly, so it's almost like they have two bench coaches.
Yeah, it's like...
Even John Gibbons, when he was explaining this, says, I don't really understand how that's going to work. But
it's going to come down to who's going to be the bench coach, I think, at least.
I mean, the way it is these days with stats, everything's kind of changed. I don't know.
It's hard to say who's
Don Mattingly's turned almost, I think they're, his role is almost more of a hitting coach now, it sounds like. Which, I mean, that's good because they really need that. I think they didn't get rid of Guillermo Martinez.
I think he's still around. He could be back.
Yeah, he's still around. But, I mean, obviously, maybe it does look like they need some help with a hitting coach, so maybe Mattingly will help in that sense. And then DeMarlo Hale can help him out with the bench coach duties.
For sure.
But Yeah, and then of course, I think I mentioned this on the last show that Louis Rivera's gone.
Yeah, and they hired Boston's third base coach. It's now the Blue Jays' third base coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
We'll see we'll learn what his stop sign looks like.
Yeah, if it's any different.
Or maybe he doesn't like, maybe he actually sends the runner once in a while.
You never know, man. First for everything, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the reason why I was mentioning John Gibbons too, this is, obviously it's been a while since the Blue Jays were eliminated, and we did do the show after that, but it was after we recorded that, listening to Gibby's show, something I wanted to talk about. He mentioned, of course, I didn't hear this from any other source other than John Gibbons, so who knows how true it actually is. I'm sure that there was some truth behind it, but remember in Game 2 there against the Twins, that pickoff play with Guerrero at second base, right?
Yeah.
Who was pitching?
Sonny Gray.
It was Sonny Gray pitching that game?
Yeah.
Okay, so he throws it to Carlos Correa, shortstop covering second base, and picks off Guerrero. It was such a huge turning point, having that runner in scoring position get picked off. Apparently, according to the Gibby show, Correa called that pickoff play with a pitch comm device. And just like John Gibbons, I had no idea that was allowed.
Yeah, seriously.
Which, I'm mind blown that it is, because to me,
that's kind of cheating.
The whole point in the pitch comm device was to
pitcher and catcher.
Yeah, it was to eliminate teams were using technology to gain an unfair advantage. They were trying to eliminate that. Yeah. And now infielders are using that very device to gain an unfair advantage.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I didn't even hear that.
So, yeah. And that explains it, because Guerrero, I mean, obviously he's being aggressive, but he's a smart base runner. He's not gonna, he knows if he's going too far for that situation. That's why it was so shocking. Yeah. But I mean,
kind of seems true now that you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're the shortstop, you want him to throw. If the pitcher's not paying attention, that's why he ventured off. You want to get his attention, smack your glove, make a noise. Maybe they have some
dirt or something.
Maybe yell at him.
Yeah.
Of course, Guerrero will pick up on that, but that's why it's hard to pick someone off. It's not something you see very often.
Right.
In this case, it's if you're Guerrero, what are you supposed to do? Now, he's watching Sonny Gray, and he's picked up on his delivery and said, okay, when he gets to this point, he doesn't look, he's committed to his pitch, I know that I can lead off further.
Yeah.
So he's picked up on that the old-fashioned way, and then this infielder just presses a button to warn the pitcher, hey, throw it to me, he's leading off too far.
And add on to that, say it is true, guess cheaters never learn from their mistakes, right? It goes back to Houston days with him, right?
Yeah. So obviously that is allowed if it was the case, but to me that goes against the whole integrity of why pitch comm was invented.
Yeah, for sure.
Infielders, if an infielder is using it to call a pickoff play, that's using technology to gain an unfair advantage. So I think that's kind of wrong.
Yeah, me too.
But I just wanted to talk about that. I think we agree that shouldn't be allowed, and it is. So hopefully that's something that can be addressed going forward. I mean, if that's the case, the whole game is going to be dictated by a computer eventually. Much for catchers or pitchers calling the game. It's going to be a random number generator choosing which pitch is thrown.
Yeah, it's getting blown out of proportion, with all this new rules and changes to the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that's a little bit too far, and that shouldn't be allowed. And it also explains why he was picked off so easily.
Yeah.
If that was the case.
Exactly.
You just press a button, the pitcher's about to throw his pitch, and then he gets warned, hey, throw it to second. Yeah. I don't even know that the runner's off the bag, but I know to throw it because I was told.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, with that, I think we can talk a little bit maybe about the Blue Jays off-season. Yeah. Obviously, Chad Green is coming back, which is big.
On a 2-year deal.
Yeah. Chapman, I thought that they had pretty much agreed on a deal with him, but it turns out that wasn't the case. So
now they're making a big push to actually keep him in Toronto.
Yeah, and you know what? After the season he had last year, I'm not sure. I mean, if he wants to come back, then that's great, but it's not worth going out of your way to give him a bunch of money because even though he's a Gold Glover, he had a great April at the plate, but the rest of the season he was just a liability almost offensively. Yeah. So to me, it's you know what, again, I know we've said this before about BGO, but the way that BGO really came on in the second half of the season, he could play third base.
Well, look at the plays he's done at third base in the season. He's more than capable.
And I remember saying after Semyon left, okay, he'll go back to second, but now he's shown he can play all those positions equally well.
For sure.
So that's valuable. He can play second as well. plus we have Espinal. Maybe Davis Schneider makes the roster next year.
They got
And then
tons of
BGO can
options,
play
man.
third.
Yeah.
And then Merrifield, another free agent who, obviously he was he had an option which he declined. I think everyone was expecting that.
Yeah.
To be honest, like as good as a season as he had last year, in fact, he was our only hitter that was nominated for a Silver Slugger award
Yeah.
at the newly created utility position.
Yeah.
But obviously, like he did struggle a lot in September. He stopped getting as much playing time, and I don't know if he was too happy about that. Like you could just tell by his body language.
Yeah.
He might have been a little bit upset. Like he didn't even start either of the playoff games, did he?
I don't think so.
Yeah, and then not to mention, like he was very upset about the decision to pull Jose Barrios.
Yeah, well, the guy was killing it. That was a stupid decision anyways, right?
So he was vocal about that. And I think, like, even though we loved having him last year, he seemed to be enjoying it here. Just based on the way that it ended, I really don't see him coming back.
Yeah, probably not.
So I wish him the best.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, I mean, there was Simber as well, who what happened with him?
Assignment, I think.
Yeah, which that surprised me. Like, I mean,
well, he
he
missed
barely
a lot
pitched
of
last year.
Yeah,
he was injured.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, he wasn't himself when he was playing.
But look back to 2021, he was killing it.
Led the majors in innings pitched as a reliever, didn't he?
Yeah, he was unbelievable.
Yeah, or led the Blue Jays at least. He was among the top in innings pitched. But,
well, with that being said, hopefully Chad Green can do the same.
Yeah, and bringing back Chad Green's great, even though it's a small sample last year. I know that what he's done in the past.
He's more than confident.
Yeah,
capable to do
and
it.
hopefully another guy's Jordan Hicks, right? He's still a free agent.
Yeah,
it would be great to have him back.
It would be,
because that bullpen that was so great last year. I mean, if we can bring most of those guys back,
you don't want to see it go to waste.
And having him and Romano as a 1-2 punch, like I mean, because even Romano has had a couple ups and downs last year, so having another guy that you can lean towards and be just as confident in is great. And then it's like, okay, that way, like if you get into a jam in the 8th inning or in the 7th inning, you can put in whoever your best reliever is at that time and still be confident that you have someone just as good to put out there in the 9th.
Absolutely.
You don't have to feel like you're burning them or that you can't use them because you need to save them for that situation.
Right.
So that's definitely great.
Yeah.
Now, again, to fill some of those spots, Kiermaier is the other one. I mean,
that was a huge pickup. He was pretty good, like pretty well all season.
He was a great pickup considering, where his expectations might have been.
Yeah.
I would, he loved playing in Toronto more than anything.
Yeah.
But he gave the impression in his, thank you letter
that
to the fans that he wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I guess because of his lingering injuries, he has a hard time playing on turf. And that's essentially what it's come down to, I think. Because otherwise, I don't see any reason why he would want to leave. Like, he loved it here.
And the fans loved him.
It was a great fit.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's coming back, and it makes sense now that I understand the turf issue.
Yeah.
But obviously, Varsho can easily fill in at center field.
Yeah.
Hopefully has a better season offensively, but defensively, if he plays the whole season in center field, he can easily win a Gold Glove there, just like Kiermaier did.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
Springer in the outfield.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of filling that other spot, we mentioned it. Teoscar Hernandez is a free agent, right?
Yeah.
He has mentioned that he wants to come back to Toronto.
Yeah.
And we're trying to regain some of that offense that we lost. Maybe some of the spirit of those 2021 and 22 teams offensively. I think it's a no-brainer. You need to get this guy back.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, at the deadline, there was a lot of talk about it.
It never happened.
In the off-season, I haven't heard too much yet, but I think you really need to get him back.
Yeah.
Because all people have talked about is, they went a little bit too far with their sacrificing hitting for more pitching and defense. They became a great pitching and defense team.
Right.
So now it's like, okay, well, we got Eric Swanson, and we got Adam Mako is the name of the other pitching prospect we got, right? Yeah. So imagine if we signed him as a free agent, having those two guys that we got for him, and having Teoscar back. It's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got the guys that you traded him for, and you also have him.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah.
That would work out nice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, what everyone wants to talk about is Ohtani.
Or Soto.
Yeah.
Who are they going to get, and is it going to happen?
I know, every team talked about Ohtani when it became more and more obvious that he might not re-sign with the Angels.
Yeah.
And the Angels aren't even out of the question. So neither are the Cubs, right? And a few other teams. But at this point, it's really between the Blue Jays and the Dodgers, it seems like.
Yeah.
The Dodgers more so the favorite. But
yeah.
I mean, it's great to see. Like, obviously, we knew that they were going to try and make a push. It's just a matter of at what point in the conversation do the Blue Jays kind of fall out of that discussion? Because that's usually what happens. I mean, we were in the conversation when Ohtani first came to the majors, but the fact that it's down to almost 2 teams and we're still in the mix.
Yeah, they're still trying to get Soto too, right?
It tells me that, there actually is a very good chance that we can sign Ohtani.
Yeah.
Don't get your hopes up. It's probably still less than a 50% chance.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that by the end of this week, he's going to make a decision. And if they can get him, and, that would almost rejuvenate Guerrero a little bit, having Ohtani in the lineup as well.
For sure.
And then you mentioned Soto, too, which...
Well, if you can't get one, go for the other.
Yeah.
Right? But
the only concern with him is what do we give up, right?
Yeah, it's going to be not just prospects and guys in AAA,
Some people are saying Bichette even is in the mix, which I hope not. I don't want to give up Bichette at this point.
I feel like if it comes down to that, they will regret getting rid of him.
Because, Soto, despite what a great player he is, it's only a 1 year. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, so it's like a rental type thing.
Well, that's the ththing. If you're going to get one of these or both of these 2 superstars, you got to lock them up.
And that's the thing. I don't want to have to give up either Guerrero or Bichette, either of those guys.
Right.
So there's a chance. If it comes down to that, I'd say it's not worth it.
No.
But, the other thing, I heard that they actually are interested in Danny Jansen as one piece, which, you know what? Too bad that we traded Moreno and too bad we traded Riley Adams, because otherwise we'd have that depth at catcher now. And Reese McGuire, too, followed by Zach Collins. We had all this depth at that position a couple of years ago, and now it's down to really just Jansen and Kirk. So I don't want to have to give up one of them. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is Manoah. There's been increasing trade talks about him.
Yeah, San Diego.
How would you feel about him possibly being the main piece in that Soto trade?
I'm okay with it. No way.
I think it's way too early to give up on him after last year.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, getting a guy like Soto, then maybe that changes the conversation.
You have Rios. You have Bassett.
Yeah.
And you can probably get another guy to finish, or 2 more guys to finish your rotation.
Ryu is probably leaving at this point, right?
Yeah.
He's still a free agent, right?
But
hasn't signed.
If you can get Soto for Manoah and someone with minimal loss to the team, then why not, right? Mm-hmm. If it's going to spark your team and go for a run in the playoffs, right?
I don't want to have to trade Manoah, but I think if it means getting Juan Soto without giving up one of our big hitters, then I think it's worth having that conversation at least.
Oh, for sure.
If not, I don't know, maybe a prospect like Ricky Tiedemann, maybe.
Yeah, and he's been lights out.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to have to give up too much, but also, Soto is a huge player, so you've got to give up something, and then
they're not just going to give him away.
If not, then maybe they're sending a message that they're all in on next season, just reminds you of when the Raptors traded for Kawhi Leonard a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy, but look what happened.
Yeah, it worked out. Because they went all in on that 1 year. They knew they had a good team, but they weren't good enough to get past that point in the playoffs. But it'll be interesting. We'll probably try and do this again in a couple weeks, close to the holidays, after the World Junior roster has been announced. And I'm sure that by then we'll know where Ohtani and Soto are playing next year.
Yeah, for sure.
So that'll be real interesting to see.
Yep.
I think that just about sums it up for the Blue Jays. Any other baseball stuff you wanted to mention?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
Next topic.
I'm sure that I'll probably forget a few things. I'll realize a few things that I forgot after this, but it's all good.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Might as well maybe mention the Leafs a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they're doing fine this season.
Yeah, so far, so good.
Lots of overtime games, which, I mean, they have a few overtime losses, mostly the wins, which, hey, 15 years ago, those all would have been ties, and they wouldn't be getting those extra points, but, and also if they had the IHF point system where regulation wins are worth more, they wouldn't be getting as much, but that's not the case, so.
Fair enough.
They're still hanging in there in the standings. I know that, almost in the last couple of weeks, things are starting to come together a little bit more, because, a few weeks ago, people were starting to panic, which I was thinking it's not worth it. It's way too early. They were in a playoff spot, and you know what? If the last few years have shown us anything, it's that in the NHL, it's true. All you need to do is just make the playoffs. So, you know what? Maybe that's what they need. Make the playoffs without being a favorite, and then make a run, because that's what seems to work for the other teams.
Absolutely.
And you look at the Capitals, all the years they won the President's Trophy or had one of the best records, and then they could never get past the second round. Often the Penguins were the team beating them.
Yeah.
And then 2018, just when it looked like that window was starting to close, that's the year they finally do it. So, I feel like with the Leafs, maybe that could be the case.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know their goaltending is a bit iffy, and we don't really have a clear number one. But you know what? Like, you can, in this day and age, you can get through an entire season and be a great team with a 1A and a 1B goalie. You don't need a true number one.
No,
Two
exactly.
guys that share the job can be fine.
Well, yeah, like
Wall's been playing pretty well lately.
Yeah, for sure. And when you have two goalies that are playing the best and they're close friends, I look at Boston's two goalies.
Yep.
They're like best friends, and they're both not competing for that job.
And last year they split it almost evenly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Leafs can do that, then they should be in good shape.
I mean, so come playoffs, like, preferably you have a guy you want to lean on. Then again, if it doesn't go well, then you have the other guy ready.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, like, I know Samsonov struggled a little bit at times, but so did Wall. Lately, Wall's been playing really well, but you can't count out Samsonov because he's had a few very good starts in his last few as well. So
yeah,
I think they've got a good tandem there. Obviously, on defense, that's they were struggling there with some guys. Milligren's still out, obviously, and then McCabe was out for a bit, right?
Yeah,
but
John
and Timmins, getting Timmins back has been big. Obviously, guys like Legason and Benoit getting some big minutes is a little bit, showing maybe the lack of depth. But a guy like Klingberg, so he's injured now too, and I've heard it's actually pretty bad. So hopefully he does come back at some point this season.
Yeah, for sure.
But like all the people were complaining about Klingberg and stuff, and that he wasn't doing his job well enough. It's like you realize when he signed him, or when the Leafs signed him, his whole career he's been an offensive defenseman. Yeah. So if you sign a guy who his strength is that he's an offensive defenseman, then you can't complain that he's being too offensive. That's what you knew. We knew we were getting that from him.
Yeah, for sure.
So he wasn't the problem, I don't think. It's just, as usual, Leafs fans being too hard on one particular guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, obviously, Liljegren's been a big loss, which I can't believe, actually, the Leafs played the Bruins on Saturday and still nothing happened.
Yeah, I know.
You're expecting one of our tough guys to step up.
Hey, Reeves,
that's kind of the place for.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Oh, well,
yeah,
stuff like that sucks because in the playoffs you need to play a little bit tougher.
But for sure.
Whatever, we just need to get there. As long as they can get in the playoffs with at least a decent seed, I think they're in good shape. And then come playoffs, that's when it's really crunch time.
Yeah.
And for all the people that were complaining or that were worried a few weeks ago, still, just look at the Oilers. I keep reminding myself that. The Oilers are in win now mode just as much as the Leafs, and they were a few games ago the second worst team in the NHL.
Yeah.
The only reason why they're even, now, they're actually, only 2 or 3 games below 500, but that's because they've won, 4 in a row to get there.
Yeah.
So they played themselves to a point where they have to be one of the best teams in the league for the rest of the season to even get in the playoffs.
Right.
I'm sure that they will, but it's you know what, for all the Leafs fans panicking, it could be much worse. It could be the Oilers.
Yeah.
Even the Flames as well. The expectations aren't quite as high, but still, they were expecting to be a better team this year, and they're not even in the conversation at this point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think they're in good shape. Another thing I want to mention about the Leafs, you notice in Sweden, they wore blue helmets with their white uniforms.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It actually does look good. It's just we're so not used to it because for 50 years since helmets have been in the NHL, they've been wearing white helmets.
Yeah.
It just looked a little different, but
I kind of liked it though.
Yeah, once you get used to it. The NHL actually passed a new rule a couple weeks ago, just before that, allowing teams to wear a colored helmet with their white uniforms because before that, teams always wear white helmets, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But in junior and in college, you see it more. So that's what I found, seeing that it's looks like a junior team, but if you just get over the fact that we're not used to it, it does look good.
Yeah.
So maybe going forward, it's kind of a cool look if they I wouldn't go to that permanently, but maybe they mix it up, go with white helmets sometimes, blue sometimes.
Why not, right?
It's in football, you can, with your white uniform, you can wear your white pants or you can wear your dark pants, and both look good.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I think that's just something I thought I'd add in there.
Absolutely,
uniform detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I as for why they were doing it in Sweden, I guess it was an honor. It was a tribute to Börje Salming of some sort.
Yeah.
They never wore uniforms like that, but they had the white jerseys with the blue trim at the top. So I think they were kind of going for that look.
And they had the patch on too.
They wore the patch, which is nice.
Good on them.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Anyway, I guess the other thing, I want to talk about the Argos a little bit.
Oh yeah, here we go.
I jumped on that bandwagon all in after the Blue Jays were out. They went 16-2, like
Yeah,
lost 2 games during the regular season, defending Grey Cup champions. Really a team that's not getting enough recognition in this fan base as they should. For whatever reason, Toronto fans don't like the CFL like the rest of Canada does. But bottom line, though, they've had that home field advantage for the Eastern Final clinched since like August, basically.
yeah,
And then after losing 2 games all season, they lose that game. So that kind of sucked. Like, honestly,
yeah.
Chad Kelly, I think, is the league MVP, but that was like a horrible performance from a quarterback.
Yeah. You think you really deserved it after that?
I mean, it's for the regular season,
Yeah,
but
true.
whatever. Maybe you feel bad for him a little bit because he did come in as a backup in the Grey Cup game last year and won it for them. But
Yeah, no, it's a great game.
I think like through the first 3 quarters, he had like 20 passing yards in total, and they were almost all from the opening drive. They get the ball, they march down to like the 10-yard line. Looks like we're about to get a touchdown. Throws an interception in the end zone that the Alouettes run all the way back for their own touchdown. And then from there, like that was like a turning point right away. Like they just never really came to fruition. And then, I mean, good for Montreal. They were an underdog in that game, and then they went on to beat Winnipeg in the Grey Cup. So
yeah,
shout out to them
for sure.
And then speaking of, I guess, football, maybe want to talk about the Bills for a couple minutes.
Sure.
They're 500 right now. Obviously not where they need to be. And at this point, it's going to be hard for them to even get into a playoff spot with opponents they have coming up. But you know what? They're still a great team. And it's shocking that they're in this position. They've just had so many games this year where they've looked like, whether it's their defense being garbage, their offense just being non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And, they got rid of their offensive coordinator. And that was like, the reason why things are looking better now is because it's almost like they were trying to coach Josh Allen to play differently.
Yeah.
Don't take as many risks, don't run as much, don't wait so long to throw it, just be more fundamentally sound. Yeah. But it's like, that's what makes him great, is his ability to play like that.
So don't try to break what's not broken.
Now they're letting him be himself again, and it's working. The problem is we have these hard opponents now. So,
and the season's only so long, right? Yeah.
They need to win some clutch games. They obviously didn't play this past weekend, but that game against the Eagles, really tough to lose that game. They lost it in overtime. The Eagles made like a 50-yard field goal to tie it.
Were they up in that game 10-7?
Yeah, they were up by 3. It was the last possession, and then, it came down to this ridiculously long field goal that you would assume they're going to miss. They end up making it to send it to overtime. But the Eagles were a 9-1 team. It's like they played fantastic against a 9-1 team. The only reason why they didn't win is because of that field goal, plus a couple questionable calls there.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my god, if they played like that all season, then they would be like 8-2 themselves. Yeah. But that wasn't the case. They haven't been playing that way. So.
What about Burrows on the?
Yeah, Burrow, and actually that's Cincinnati's another team that wasn't having quite the season that they expected after the last couple of years.
Wrist injury.
And now Burrow's out for the season, so I think it's good for the Bills. Like, getting into the playoffs will be maybe a little bit easier now that they're not fighting for it with them anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know all the gamblers were arguing that if his wrist was like sore before the game, they should have had that information before they made their bets. Which is like, okay, like he's a human being too. He's not just an object that you gamble
come on, guys, come on.
But I just thought his response in the press conference was so funny. I think it was before the game, or maybe it was after, when they asked him, like, we saw in that picture on the team's Instagram that you had a splint on your wrist before the game. What was that about? And he said, like, oh yeah, well, if I was getting on a plane, it's not uncommon for guys to do that when they're at high elevation because it can swell up.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, seriously.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
You're in a pressurized cabin.
Yeah.
You think because you're high in the air, your arm is going to swell up for no reason?
Okay.
Right. Like some trainer told him to say that.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah, definitely, I mean, as always, it'll be a interesting few weeks in the NFL season to see how it ends. But on that note, I guess the next thing on our agenda here is the World Juniors, which, you know what, coming up in just a few weeks. Obviously, it's one of my favorite events of the year.
Yeah.
And you know what? Canada defending gold medalists. I've seen, some of the roster previews. There's not too many returning guys. Like a lot of the guys we had last year and, a lot returning from the year before that have mostly moved on.
Yeah.
I think one notable thing to talk about is Shane Wright is actually still eligible.
Wow.
So if the Kraken were to allow him to play, we can still have Shane Wright on this team. So I think that's pretty interesting. Like, it's rare that you see somebody play in it that many years in a row.
Yeah.
Because usually if you make it as a 16 or 17-year-old, then you're in the NHL by the time you're 18. But
yeah.
I mean, maybe like he is. I think the Kraken called him up a couple weeks ago, right? So I think it's up to them if they want to let him play. But that would be pretty cool if we could get him.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, another really notable player I wanted to talk about was Easton Cowan, the Leafs' first-round draft pick from last year.
Yeah.
He's playing for the London Knights. He is on a lot of the projected rosters that I'm seeing, but only as like a fourth liner. But I saw him play last weekend when the Knights were in Barrie, and he was fantastic. He was the best player on the ice that game.
Just lighting it up.
Yeah, he's a guy to watch. I think the Leafs have got a real good prospect with him, but I think on the World Junior team, he's a guy that can make a real impact, and hopefully he ends up taking on a bigger role than just the fourth line.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, again, in a couple weeks they'll have that roster finalized, and I think we'll record a couple of these, maybe a little shorter during the World Juniors, just because there's always so much going on in that tournament, a lot to talk about.
For sure.
I know last year, I should have put a parlay on this looking back. Once the preliminary round was over, I made my full bracket for how the rest of the tournament was going to go from the quarterfinals onward, and it was perfect.
There you go.
So, hey, maybe I'll do that again. I'll actually put something on it this year.
Why not?
Of course, if I do, then it's not going to be perfect again. But
hey, never say never, man.
Yeah, that's the way she goes. I don't know, any players or anything that you've heard about in terms of the World Juniors or that you're interested in following?
Haven't heard much, but just hope to see Canada go for it again,
Yeah, of course. Regardless of the players we put out there, we know we're always capable.
Absolutely.
For the first time in a few years, it's back in Europe, not on home ice. So let's see how that impacts them.
That's very true.
Yeah. And in fact, another Leafs prospect, I think Fraser Minton, right? He's another guy.
Yes.
Like, he actually made the Leafs opening night roster, but now he's back in junior, and he's projected to be on that team.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. Lots to watch for. We'll see how it unfolds in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, always look forward to that tournament for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, anything else you wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap things up?
I think we covered everything, really.
Actually, I know one thing you mentioned earlier in the week was the Corey Perry situation.
Oh, that's right. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, basically, like, the last couple of years of his career, he's really been an agitator, right? And
yeah, you almost like don't want him on your team. You hate playing against him.
Yeah. And it's good in a way that he's found a way to keep his career going and be impactful. But I find that it's almost overshadowed what a great career he's had, and the fact that like he's probably a Hall of Famer unless this damages his reputation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably a Hall of Famer, triple Gold Club member. Like, basically has the exact same resume as Sidney Crosby, except one Stanley Cup instead of 3. He has 2 Olympic gold medals, a Stanley Cup, a World Championship, a World Junior Championship, on the World Cup of Hockey team in 2016 as well. He's very accomplished. A member of the Triple Gold Club. There's 2 different Triple Gold Clubs that people recognize. He's a member of both of them. So
so his stats and one of the achievements don't lie.
Yeah, one of the best players of our generation. But obviously his reputation started to change these last few years. And, I mean, we don't really know what's happened. But
you'll never know, because you weren't. Yeah. We'll never know the real truth of it, right?
And I think he's receiving treatment now for, I guess,
mental health,
alcoholism, or mental health, which
both. I think.
Good for him, I guess, if that's what's the steps that needed to be taken.
Absolutely, no, for sure.
As for the rumors that were spreading, I think that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
people.
I'm not gonna share what was talked about.
It's crazy that people are actually believing that, and and almost the fact that so many people are believing that made me wonder if there was actually some truth behind it.
Yeah.
But obviously Connor Bedard spoke about it, and his mom had to deactivate her social media accounts because of all the tags and messages she was getting.
Yeah, it's just blown out of proportion, and you hope the rumor isn't true.
And I think we don't know at this point that it isn't. We know that apparently the incident involved a team staff member. We don't know who or what it was.
Right.
But
and you won't know because
yeah,
they're just going to cover it
but
up.
as for the Blackhawks, I mean, I think they're partially at fault for why these rumors spread the way they did.
Yeah.
Because they released a statement saying that his behavior was unacceptable and all that, and that he violated these team policies in his contract. But then they don't share any details about what happened. So, of course, people are going to start speculating.
Oh,
and
for
then
sure.
any rumor that's out there could be true as far as you know, because nobody told us what happened.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, the same organization that hid that whole Kyle Beach situation as well. Now
with Joe Quenneville being the head coach.
Yeah. No, the Blackhawks have got to do a better job handling these situations.
Absolutely. No one shot themselves in the foot for the second time, right?
So, yeah, hope for the best for Corey Perry and for whoever else was involved in the incident. And hopefully Connor Bedard's mom isn't getting any more messages about that now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's just about time to wrap things up. But one more thing that I did want to at least mention before we go is Canada winning the Billie Jean King Cup women's tennis a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Which, I mean, the significance of that is that it was last year we won the Davis Cup, the men's equivalent of it.
Yep.
Now the Billie Jean King Cup, the women's version of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can say we're basically on top of the tennis world, both male and female. Which,
for sure.
It's incredible considering 20 years ago we weren't a tennis country, really.
And now we are.
And also this past summer, like none of our players, men or women, really had a good season. So it was like, we had all this excitement around it, but now things are kind of declining. Yeah. But then, they didn't have great seasons on a personal level.
Yeah.
But I think the Laver Cup is where it started to turn. It's a men's event, Team Europe versus Team World. There's Europe against the rest of the world. It was hosted in Vancouver this year. And Felix, who struggled most of the year, played great in that tournament and was a big part of Team World winning. So that was great to see. And then, Layla on the female side obviously played some of her best tennis of the year when it counted in the Billie Jean King Cup and ended up leading them to that title. So
there we go.
Gotta give some credit to them, to those team members. It was I know Bianca was injured, but Layla, Rebecca Marino, Gabriella Dabrowski. There was a couple young up-and-comer players who played a big role in that as well. So,
exactly, for sure.
Keep
it going.
Great to see Canada making big things happen in sports, all throughout the sports world.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Yep. Any other closing remarks that you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
I think we've covered really everything we wanted to talk about. So,
all right.
Alrighty.
Well, it's great to be back. We'll see you again in a few weeks, hopefully, and yeah.